Welcome to another episode of the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Wade, editor over at dearoldgold.com. And as I promised you, we have a very special guest with us, Ryan Neidert, a former college buddy, a guy who I very much respect in terms of sports opinions. He's not going to hear that very often. I like to give him a lot of crap. But Ryan is joining us on the show to talk to us about college basketball, specifically the Iowa Hawkeyes men's team. As you know, the season is over now. Lots of things to look forward to in the coming season. I think there's a lot of talent returning. A lot of opinions, I think, though, from this past season as well. Kind of an up and down year, one with a lot of emotional investment, I think, into it, especially this past weekend. So want to have Ryan on to talk about Iowa basketball. Ryan, how are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great. As always, it's great to be a Hawkeye. And honestly, kind of feel relieved after last weekend's games. I feel like even though we didn't take the path as expected, we kind of got to the place we expected to end up, even though it kind of ended in a heartbreaking loss. But that's kind of an improvement for some of the second round games we've seen in the tournament.
Absolutely. I think it's tough for fans, right? Because you get your expectations so high and you want to see them do well. And I know I always root with my heart, right? And I want them to go further and I want them to do better. But if you take this season compared to last season, it was a huge improvement, right? 8 or 9 win improvement. They went from 14 and 19, making the tournament this year, winning their first round game. And then, as you said, the second round game, the last couple of second round games under the Fran McCaffery era have ended in pretty bad losses. I mean, double-digit losses every single time. And to make it such a close game, and obviously not the result we wanted to, and it sucks that we have to rely on moral victories, but this is one step closer, and I'm really happy they at least made it a game.
Well, one thing, everyone always has this sports debate and asks the question, would you rather lose a heartbreaking game or get blown out? I am all for losing the heartbreaking game.
Oh, yeah.
In my opinion, when you get blown out, that's just telling you and your team that you didn't belong on this level today. So when we saw them down big, down by 25 in the first half, it's like, oh, here we go again. You know, it's the team we thought. Then they came back, fought really hard, tied it up, completing the greatest comeback in tournament history. Even though they didn't win, they still made the comeback happen. And that just goes to show the fans, the players, everybody around the nation watching the game that this Hawkeye team belongs with a Tennessee team that could have been a 1 seed. I personally have them in my championship game versus Duke. I think Grant Williams and Adderall Schofield are the real deal. Jordan Bone, he's really good at point guard. So it's great to see the Hawks come back, fight, almost pull it out, and hopefully they can just build off that.
Absolutely. I think something interesting you said. So you actually picked Tennessee to beat Iowa. You did.
I picked Tennessee to beat Cincinnati.
Wow. I shouldn't have had you on this podcast. You are banned. I appreciate the honesty, but wow, that's tough. I picked Iowa to beat Cincinnati, and then I was like, well, if they get this far, I think they could beat Tennessee. So I actually picked them to go to the Sweet 16. But again, like we talked about before the show, I actually root with my heart, and I never actually root with my brain, and that's why I usually lose in Las Vegas. So that was fun.
Yeah, it's just way more fun to root with your heart, but when it comes to those brackets and there's a little bit of money on the line, sometimes it's nicer to go with your head. I called it hedging my happiness. And if Cincinnati won the game, great, 20 more points. If Iowa won the game, even better. I can get those 20 points somewhere else.
Oh man, that's smart. See, I don't go that route. I usually hedge my happiness in the sense of bet on Iowa. If they win, I'm super happy, and if they lose, I'm super pissed. And that's how it's been for Vegas for me, man. Iowa versus Michigan State, the football game. I bet on Iowa to win the game. My wife bet on Iowa to cover. I lost $100. My wife won $50. So it just doesn't really work out for me.
No, gambling. I have placed very few bets, but I definitely do pay attention to the lines. I make mental notes, and it usually comes out 50-50.
Yeah.
And so it's like, why bother?
Yeah. I mean, I ended up making basically it broke even this weekend. I placed about 45 bets and I broke even on 45 bets. So
wow,
that
sounds cool.
Yeah, super fun. But we'll need to schedule a trip out, maybe go to Vegas next year for March Madness. It was a blast as long as If I had not been sick, it'd have been great. But what I want to talk to you about, man, is this Iowa basketball team. And I mean, I think you talked a lot about it on Twitter and stuff, as you said before the show. You're very active on Twitter. You listen to a lot of people's opinions. I think you also voice your opinion very much as well. You know, if you had to grade this season, what would you give a grade as far as a letter grade?
Oh man, well, I guess if you're taking it the school route, we got a lot of the answers right. Even if the work we shown was just a terrible mess, and it might have taken us twice as long to complete the test as some of the other kids in the class. I'm sure you're familiar with that. But you still get a B plus. There's no way they're getting an A, because I think some of the things that they did this season were a little unforgivable with some of the losses, but they also did some miraculous things, and it's kind of a give or take. It all kind of balanced out. I was really hoping, I think probably back in January, that I saw the path for that double bye in the Big Ten tournament to get that win over Maryland and then beat the team you're supposed to beat. And then you kind of play Wisconsin for the 4 seed. And if you can get the top 4 in the Big Ten tournament, then you have a real good shot of winning it. If you don't get the top 4, it's really difficult to win.
It's difficult to string that many games together.
Yeah, and I think we noticed it specifically in the Michigan game when they went 0 for 14 from 3. If you're going to play back-to-back nights, you just got to make sure that your legs aren't tired. And the first thing you notice when your legs aren't tired is you're missing jump shots, and everybody's missing jump shots. And it wasn't like they normally miss them. It was just Wieskamp was long, which if he misses them, it's usually shorter off to the side. He's never really long, but he probably was long in that game because he was just trying too hard because he could felt that he was tired. Bohannon just didn't seem quick on his trigger, and then it just spiraled out of control.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that was probably the best analogy ever. I'll give them a B plus because they got the answer. It just took a lot of work, took a lot of time. And I think that was probably the best summary of the season. So, I mean, I don't disagree with you at all. I would say probably a B is a pretty solid pick for them this season. I mean, they absolutely improved over last year. I think an A season would be getting to the Sweet 16. I think for a team like this, to get to the Sweet 16 would always be that A season, and to not get to the Sweet 16 is always going to be that B season, a very average team that people love but also get very frustrated by, a team that, you get those moral victories by almost beating a Tennessee. So the one nice thing, though, I think that came out of that game is a lot of promise. This team has a lot of returners coming back. It's kind of hit or miss whether Tyler Cook's going to come back. I think he will come back. The big thing he needed to improve going to the NBA that they said is his jump shot, and I would say his consistency, and I don't think he improved on either of those. His jump shot was relatively atrocious throughout the year. I think he showed he was not as clutch as we would like to have seen from your star forward. He has moments where he takes over the game. I mean, Tennessee, for that whole second half, he was really a catalyst for that. But then, and I don't want to harp on him, obviously I'm sure he's the one who's hurting the most here, but then he misses 3 free throws in a row and a very key time in the overtime. So I think he's back, and that means you're returning every single player besides Nicholas Baer. And Baer's a very, very huge instrumental piece of this team. But let's face it, the guy is not the most athletic guy on the court. I mean, you go watch the guy run, and I honestly wonder if I would question whether or not I could beat him in a game of one-on-one just from looking at him run. I can't, for the record, but you're losing Nicholas Baer, and I don't want to take away anything from what he's doing because fantastic leader on the team, but they return a ton of players. I think this team has a good potential next year to finally break that 20-year drought and make it to the Sweet 16. What are your thoughts?
Well, let me just start with Nicholas Baer and just what he's been. He's been something almost unbelievable, and I think he's definitely, like, I'm trying to think of like Jeff Horner, Greg Bruner, Adam Haleska, Reggie Evans, just all-time Dean Oliver, all-time Hawkeyes that I've adored. I don't think there's a player that I've loved more than Nicholas Baer.
Dude, just a lot of hustle, man.
A lot of hustle, a lot of heart. Typically makes the right decisions. Doesn't look athletic, but sneaky athletic. If you want to use that phrase, I know trying not to, but let me ask you this and see if you know this answer. Who had a better 3-point percentage this year, Bohannon or Bear?
Bear.
I think it ended up being the same.
Yeah, I mean, Bohannon struggled. The thing with Bohannon is he hit those big shots and he got hot and very streaky, but Bear was a much more consistent option from downtown. I mean, Bohannon would have nights where he just kept popping them and would go 1 for 9, whereas Bear was pretty consistent. I'm actually going to look it up right now just to.
Yeah, and while you look it up, like, and he improved his shot every single year because he knew that in order to stay on the floor, he had to add something else to his game. And he just continued to get better, to get more confident. Like, he would grab and shoot like he was just one of the guys, really. And except for, I think he made very good decisions, except for he did take like a step back jumper at the top of the key inside the arc against Tennessee. And I was like, come on, man. Like, I love you, but that is, have you ever taken that shot all season? Now is not the time to start taking shots you have never taken. But
Yeah.
man, he's going to be missed, I think, for a lot of reasons.
I think the intangibles are huge. Like the value he adds, I think, is less in terms of his physical presence in the game and more of what he brings at the top of the head, with his leadership, with his charisma, with his, pride in the game, with his work effort, that kind of thing. So what kind of price tag do you put on that in terms of a season? And real quick, Bear actually finished 3 points below Bohannon. He did shoot, for whatever it's worth, about 88 less 3-pointers than Bohannon did. So Bohannon was popping them a lot more. But Bohannon also shot 37% from the field. So not exactly, I mean, overall, so not exactly a great shooting performance, whereas Bear shot 54%. So sorry, back to the initial question though. What kind of price tag do you put on his presence in the locker room? I mean, you hear the guys crying after the game, and they took the time to talk specifically about him and what he meant to that team. And I think it's tough for people who haven't played a sport to understand kind of what a guy like him means to the team. But what kind of price tag do you put on that? Do you think, how big of a regression does that make for a team where they're, returning three starting seniors?
If I've been trying since this senior class had arrived at Iowa, I've been trying to get inside that locker room and get a feel for what's been going on for a long time, because sometimes it just doesn't make sense. So I really can't answer your question. I have no idea. I know they're gonna miss him, and he's a nice guy to have in that locker room, and there's gonna be a hole there, but I think they're gonna be fine. There's going to be a lot of other things that they're going to have to worry about when practice starts next year.
Absolutely. Personally, wanted to get your thoughts on this. I think Corden Pemsl is kind of the guy who replaces the same level of energy that Bear brings on the court. Maybe not as much of a 3-point shooting prowess, but maybe a little bit more of an athletic forward down low who's going to bring that hustle, that energy. I mean, we saw it in the Iowa State game. Pemsl, one of his only games he played this season, he was absolutely fantastic, really lit a fire under the Iowa Hawkeyes in a similar way to what Bear does. So I think from my perspective, that's kind of the guy to watch out for next season, kind of one of the sleeper picks for a very key role player down the stretch.
Yeah, so I made a list out here, and I have down 13 players that could play next year.
It's crowded, man.
6 of them being seniors. So I don't know what's going to happen. And if an energy guy to replace him, Pemsl absolutely is. He was fired up for the Iowa State game. Just maybe I don't think he probably should have played, but honestly, just to play one meaningful game the entire season and have it be that one and a win, that might be worth it. And I know he's an Iowa guy from Dubuque, so he probably thinks the same. But there's so many questions with 13 possible players to play next year. If I think Patrick McCaffrey is going to play, no question. Joe Toussaint, the point guard from New York,
he's supposed to be a freaking beast, man.
He's supposed to be a freaking beast. I don't know if he's going to be a beast or if he's got a red shirt. Fran gave a shout out to another redshirt point guard, CJ Frederick, Kentucky, Mr. Basketball in the state of Kentucky. It sounds like he's shifting away from point guard and into shooting guard. So if he shifts out of that, then he may not see time next year because there'll be other guys in the way. Isaiah Moss, potential grad transfer. potential draft guy, I don't know. I'd love to see him stick around because I think he truly has some talent. It just really hasn't clicked for him in the Iowa program. So I don't know if he goes somewhere else, maybe somewhere smaller where he can probably put up 20 a night and
Be
be
that guy.
the guy.
Yeah.
That could be attractive for him. Yeah. Could he just stick to baseball? Could he say, I did you a service, Dad. I was a mercenary. I was a mercenary for you, but I'm not all that good. So let Patrick come in and take over. I'm a big Ryan Kriener fan. He's going to get tons of minutes next year. Let's see what Nunji can do. I hear he's 250 pounds.
So he's been playing some real good basketball. I mean, 6'11", man, that's a perfect compliment to Luka Garza.
Yeah, so you got them going on Garza. Maybe he gets draft interest. You talk about Cook potentially going or potentially staying. I think he should stay. And then, yeah, Pemsl and Daly rounded out. I can see Daly being the odd man out because he's a terrific defender, maybe one of Iowa's best defenders. But when he's on the floor, there's not much else he's bringing except for the occasional three, or maybe he can drive to the rim, but it's not all there.
I mean, let's be honest. There's a reason why he got called out this year, early in the year with the hot mic. I mean, there's a reason why he doesn't play a ton, and there's a reason why he only comes in defensive situations. You can't have that guy's going to lose his spot in the rotation. I honestly think Daly's probably a possible option for transferring.
Yeah, he could, but I don't know if he wants to do, because he's a true senior, so he'd have to do like the sit out the year and then play.
Oh yeah, that would suck.
So he might not, unless he gets his school finished up and he can do that grad transfer thing, which I don't fully understand. But
how it always works out where they get to play right away.
Yeah, if I were him and I saw the potential of this team and I really believed in it, I would ride it out, see where the team could take me, and then of course he's going to get minutes at some point in the season, see what he can do.
It's tough, man. I mean, there's so many minutes to go around. As you talked about, I think a very interesting question is whether or not Patrick McCaffrey redshirts. I think he has too much talent to not redshirt, but at the same time, if you're a Fran and your son needs to bulk up a little bit, do you play him at a wing position like Joe Wieskamp, or because he can handle the ball too, do you let him be a big point or a big shooting guard, and he can then match up with those guys a little bit easier? Or do you let him redshirt, and then you're building the program for years to come, which I think is a big knock on Fran typically, is that, he had that great class that came in. He had a couple 4-stars. He wrote it out, and then we thought, we've dealt with the last 2 years of mediocrity. And he's trying to space out those classes now. I mean, that's why Jack redshirted, because there wasn't gonna be a lot of minutes for him. Let's hopefully get him some time to bulk up and play again next year. So what do they do that with Patrick McCaffrey or even Joe Toussaint? I mean, he looks like an athletic beast. Listening to some of the reports on him. I mean, he's supposed to be an absolute stud. I believe he's now a 4-star point guard. He's gotten moved up in the rankings. I mean, he could be an athletic nightmare for teams. And, what happens, like I said, with Connor McCaffrey, there's a lot of swirling, I think, going around in those wing spots just because there's a lot of opportunity. Isaiah Moss is a fantastic shooting guard if he's in the right headspace, but is he going to be in the right headspace? And you're absolutely right. Does he want to be the guy on another team? On this team, he just doesn't get enough touches, I think, to get the confidence level up unless they're really gunning for him a couple times every single year. So,
yeah, and I was looking at the recruiting class earlier today, and they had Toussaint as an 88, and they had Patrick McCaffrey as a 97. And I know Wieskamp was a high-rated recruit, but I don't think he was a 97. And I don't know the last time Iowa had a 97 for a recruit. That just seems crazy to me. And shame on me for being around Iowa City and being around Des Moines these past 4 years and never seeing Patrick McCaffrey play. No, that's all on me. So I'm just hoping to be very pleasantly surprised when he shows up next year.
I mean, I watched him in the state tournament. He was actually Iowa City West was playing my old high school, Newton Senior High, and I mean, kudos to Newton. They actually did a pretty good job of keeping up with them. But Patrick was a stud, and so was Connor. I mean, those two guys were just dominating that entire game, and you just couldn't get around them. I mean, Patrick has a ton of size. Connor's, I think Connor is an interesting person for me in terms of basketball because I think he has a lot of talent, but I think he realizes what he needs to do on the team, and it's not be that shoot first guy. But I think he got in such a headspace where he didn't believe in shooting at all that actually hurt him throughout the season. Teams were, when Connor got the ball, they weren't worried about him shooting it at all. They were just focusing on where he's going to pass it at. I think he needs to be in the right headspace as well, but I think it'd also be interesting to see whether or not he stays on this team. I mean, he did get rewarded a scholarship finally, so he very well could stay. I find it difficult to think he would actually leave the program, though.
Yeah, I don't see it happening. I see him sticking around. I think it'd be cool to play with your brother, play with your dad, but I would understand if he didn't. Like, I totally get it because you were right
He's
about
on the baseball diamond, dude.
Yeah, I think right after they lost to Michigan, he went out to the diamond and went 3 for 3.
Yeah,
And then, but
two
then he
doubles.
was doing all that, and apparently he was sick during the NCAA tournament, so he didn't get a lot of minutes that way, which I didn't think that they needed him in the spot, so I was okay with that. But I would expect to see him back and just to see what happens. But you were right, teams were absolutely leaving him open because they couldn't trust his shot. And I hear people complain like, "Why are you shooting? You can't shoot." It's like he has to.
Yeah.
If teams can't respect him wide open, the top of the key or on the corner, I was screwed when he's in the game.
Yep. It's just like Macy Daly. And it's the reason why Luka Garza being able to shoot the three, albeit not overly effective, about 28, 29%. But the reason why him and Ryan Creen are being able to shoot the three-pointer, at least at some relative successful level, is so important for the Hawks because when you get those big guys working you inside out and then you get the big guys coming out, then it leaves the middle of the floor open for the guards to drive. We just need those guards to actually drive. And I think Bohannon can be that guy, but I thought he was really hesitant this year and not willing to do some of that. And also teams were very aggressive on him throughout the season. I mean, he was getting pushed around the top of the perimeter at all times this year.
And you would see the importance of that and give Fran credit. I think him and his coaching staff draw up some of the best out-of-bounds plays in the entire country. I don't know if there's anyone better, but they drew up an out-of-bounds play for Luka Garza against Cincinnati. And I heard Fran on the post-game talk about it. I was like, yeah, that's a typical set we run. We usually run it for like Bohannon and Moss, and we just changed it a little because in that second half against Cincinnati, Garza was the hot hand.
He was tearing it
and
up.
Cincinnati did not expect Garza to step out like that, and he was so open, and he just knocked it down. Yet it's another wrinkle, especially seeing in the basketball game of today in the NBA. If you're 7 foot, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to shoot a three.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's such a huge mismatch. I would like to see him bulk up a little bit, and I only say that simply because I think he gets pushed around down in the paint a little bit too much. You see big, aggressive guys down low, and he can't defend them as well. I mean, he's obviously a good enforcer for people driving into the paint, but big guys are going to push him around. I mean, when you're 6'11", you should not be getting just 4 rebounds a game. I know he's playing limited minutes, but you should be a little bit more of an enforcer on the boards when you're that tall. That's the one thing I would like to see him improve in his game.
So that just goes into a lot of the Iowa's problems. Is like they have very nice pieces. They really don't have any complete pieces. And Luka Garza, he's a patient touch shooter type of guy on offense. We've seen it. We praise him so much for it. But he does that because that's what he has to do. He doesn't have very much explosiveness on offense, so he's not going to have explosiveness on defense. He's not going to have explosiveness on the rebound. I really thought he actually rebounded fairly well against Tennessee. That was a pleasant surprise, but when you had Schofield and Williams out of the game, the rebounding becomes just a little bit easier.
Absolutely.
And they were playing for their lives at that point. So every little jump up in the air just seemed like it was a little like a half inch bigger because this was it. This was the season.
Absolutely. I think for me, I get frustrated with the lack of rebounding presence from him and from the rest of the Hawks. I mean, they consistently get out rebounded when it felt like it mattered, not necessarily in the Tennessee and Cincinnati game. I mean, but beginning in both those games, especially Cincinnati was getting 2 or 3 chances every single offensive set or every single offensive possession because they were just getting the rebounds every single time. And to me, rebounding is part athleticism and part positioning and mindset. Are you going to box that guy out? Are you going to get in the right position? Are you going to push that guy around? Are you putting yourself in a position where you understand where that ball is going to go? And I would like to see them get better at that next year. I think that'd be huge.
So there's a couple things that I've kind of noticed about this rebounding. It's become quite the problem. So because you mentioned that Iowa tends to get pushed around to the post a little bit, they front the post man, so they play in front of him on defense to deny any entry pass. We don't have to deal with it. So when a shot goes up, they're already out of position. The offensive guy already has the inside track, and they just need to box him out. And we talked a little bit about explosiveness, and there's some lack of explosiveness from, Kriener and Garza. And I have my thoughts on Tyler Cook and his explosiveness. It's called the second hop. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. I know,
No.
so you jump up the first time, and everybody jumps up really high, and they tip the ball back in the air. The key is the guy who can jump up the quickest on the second time. And it just seems to me that Cook gets beat on that second hop every time.
It does seem like they all go up, and we never come down with it after a little bit of scramble at the top.
Yeah, and you kind of wonder why a guy like Nick Baer gets so many rebounds, because he's either timing his jumps differently or he's taking the balls away when they bring it down below their shoulders, and he's just trying to do something differently because he has to.
I mean, he's adapting to the game, and I would like to see that from some of the other guys. Like, for example, Tyler Cook. All too often, I feel like this season we saw him try to be the point guard and take it court, from one end to the other, or try to drive into the lane. That is not your game. Do not try to be something you're not. But also, what can you improve? I mean, it's just like the general facet of life. Like, what are some of your weaknesses that you can improve on, and what are some of your strengths and you can improve on? And let's not exploit some of your worst weaknesses. I feel like Tyler Cook needs a little bit of a lesson in that.
Yeah, we saw from the very beginning of the season the story of Tyler Cook. We heard he was going to test his draft waters. Then we heard that the report came back that he should work on his jump shooting. So then in the first 5 games, we saw him taking all these jumpers, and it was not good. So then he kind of cut that out, and then we saw his struggles from the free throw line. We've seen him be very talented as like the point guard or whatever you want to call it, but most of the time we see it end up in disaster.
Yeah.
I think Tyler Cook is a good basketball player. I think he is very good at, catching the ball on the post and scoring off the post. I think he has good moves. I think he has decent touch. Even if he doesn't shoot 70% from the free throw line, he still does a great job of getting fouled and getting to the line. If you average 1 point per possession, that's a quality possession, in my opinion. Yep. So if you can go 1 for 2, that's a really good possession. That's better than someone taking a 15-footer and bricking it.
Absolutely.
So, and then you also get, their team in foul trouble. So he is very good at some things on the court, but like you said, he's trying to do all of it, and sometimes it works for him, and it seems like it's working just enough for him that he believes in himself, and Fran believes in him, and his teammate believes that he can do those things. So it's, you got to take the good with the bad with Tyler Cook.
Absolutely.
And I don't think he's going to stop doing it. So he's got to live with it.
Just got to deal with it. Well, I don't disagree with you on that. Real quick, I know we're kind of running on time here, but as far as next season, what would make next season a successful season for you? As an Iowa Hawkeye fan, what would you say? Is it winning a Big Ten title? Is it getting a double bye? Is it getting a top 5 seed? Is it making it as a Sweet 16? What would classify a good season, an A season in your book for you?
So I've been thinking a little bit about the Big Ten landscape. I think there are some key players on Michigan and Michigan State leaving, but I think you look at other teams and there's a lot of younger talent coming up, and I think there are also a lot of seniors along with Iowa's 6. Other teams have a lot of seniors. So I think it's going to be pretty competitive again. It just might come from different places than the typical places.
Like
but
Rutgers,
then maybe
Illinois.
Illinois, maybe Michigan State and Michigan reload as they typically can do. Maybe Purdue reloads. But I'm just kind of fixated on that top four, on that double bye. If you finish Big Ten in the top four, you know you're going to the tournament. You know you have a chance to win the tournament, even if you don't finish in first place and win the conference championship. I'm okay with that. And even if you don't win the tournament in Chicago or Indy or wherever it is, I'll be okay with that. Their non-conference is going to be a lot tougher, more challenging, and that's by design for this senior class. So there could be some cool games going on in November, some signature games like in Las Vegas, in Chicago. So cool experiences for fans, cool experiences for players, and winning those games would be just so much more rewarding than beating Campbell or Bryant or wherever.
Absolutely.
And if you lose, then it's not going to get counted against you that much because you're going to have a tough conference schedule. And then you go to the dance, and I would really like to see them get to the Elite Eight. And I think they really want that. And they know they're good enough for that. So they're gonna have to help themselves out though by getting a 6 seed or higher.
Yeah, make
Can't
this
be
schedule a
messing
little bit
around with
easier
the
for them.
7-10. Because if you get a 6 seed, you can get, or it's 3 through 6, you can play teams that also have weaknesses. You can maybe get some help from an upset down the road, and then you can just advance a little bit further. Yeah, I'm not expecting the world from these guys because they have their juniors, they have pretty much matured to their highest level, but they still have a little bit more to go. And hopefully they're just hungrier for it. That's really the only thing that they can change would be just a different mental mindset that we saw in the second half against Tennessee, where Bohannon just started shoving the Tennessee defender because he just wasn't ready to take it yet.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see them play at the intensity they did. And I know it's tough to sustain, but I'd like to see them play at that same intensity they did in the second half throughout the entire season. Keep it up, play hard. I mean, that's what I think was frustrating is it almost just felt like I know they're trying hard, but sometimes just didn't feel like the effort was always there, or it just felt like they were just kind of coasting in times in games, and that's where they were getting blown out, which is incredibly frustrating to watch. But I absolutely agree. I think so for you to have an A-plus season or an A season, Iowa has to make the Elite Eight. I think that's 100% fair. For me, I would like to see them at least make the Sweet 16. That, I think, would be a huge monkey off their back. I don't disagree. The fact that they got a taste of it this year is huge. The fact they finally got to the NCAA tournament. They got some monkeys off their back. They won some road games, right? They finally made the tournament. They did a few good things. They beat some solid teams. They won that first game in the NCAA tournament, and they showed that they could play against Tennessee if they played their game. I think you're right. That is huge if they can come in with that same mindset. I think that's why I feel like Cook may return. I think that would be a kind of an unfinished business type of thing. We got closer, but we're not all the way there, and we have more room to grow. As far as one last thing I wanted to cover, and this is kind of an interesting question. I think it's been a hot topic in Iowa basketball history, and especially the last couple of years. And I've seen some reports. I don't know if you read The Athletic, but Scott Doterman does a great job, and he talked a little bit about the history of Tom Davis and the firing, or basically the letting go of Tom Davis. What are your thoughts on Fran McCaffery? Do you think next season is a hot seat season for Fran? I think a lot of folks were pretty pissed off from this year, upset over the last 2 years. I want to get your thoughts, and I'll give my thoughts, and then we'll close out the show. Okay?
Yeah. So I have notes on this. Absolutely.
You knew this was coming.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is interesting. I have gone so back and forth in this season particularly. And then when it was rumored that, the whole Gary Dolphin suspension, and it just seemed like it could be personal between him and Fran, that didn't help Fran's case. But after, calmed down and really thought about it, and it's like, it all seems to be true, but it might not be, and it probably doesn't matter. I mean, I adore Gary Dolphin very much, but he is just the radio guy. And without the coach and the team, there's nothing for Gary to call. And he'll always have Kirk Ferentz always have his back, so Gary's not going anywhere. But with Fran, there is things that I really like about Fran. I think he is a program builder. I really love the type of athletes that he's bringing in. I love that, I feel like the Iowa basketball players he's bringing in compared to past years are way more athletic. They're taller, they play at a quicker pace, they're not afraid to shoot. I love all that. I know, we are missing some type of recruits like the point guards from Pittsburgh, as was mentioned. But I think he has brought Iowa recruiting to a much better level and um, just a much better reputation around the nation for what the program brings. I do like his culture, even though he gets a little hot-headed sometimes and he called a ref a bleep and bleep or whatever. You don't hear any of his players ever say anything bad about Fran. They have nothing
They
good.
love playing for
They
him.
have nothing good to say about Fran.
Nothing bad.
Um, Nothing bad to say about
Yeah,
Fran. All
I was
good,
like,
all good
nothing
things. Like
good's not good.
yeah, all good things, all good things about Fran. And I think, after his son Patrick, who's now playing with them, went through the cancer thing, I think he has really changed his outlook, and the team has felt it, and the players he brings in has felt it, and just the unique community that the university brings with their cancer research and cancer hospitals. So I think there is a lot of good things about Fran. But and then of course, I just want to see what Patrick can do. And if you fire Fran, Patrick goes with him.
Yep.
So so let's see what that brings. And the other reason why he's not going anywhere is that contract.
It's a
It's
little bit
it's
bulletproof.
it's too soon for Iowa to act on that contract right now. The one complaint about Fran is his in-game coaching. I know he does a lot of things that are unique that I enjoy. He doesn't mind if players kind of shoot whenever they want. I enjoy that. If someone's hot, let them shoot it, let them figure it out. I like that he plays multiple types of defenses. I think that's something good to mix it up. It's just this particular team isn't great at any of them that he tries to pick out. But I kind of would like to see him use some timeouts more. I know he doesn't like doing that. He likes saving his timeouts to the game. He likes players working through him. I would like to see him cut down on his rotations, just maybe play only 8 guys. But if he wants to play 13, then he better put a press on the entire game and
Yeah,
wear
work
the
'em.
other team out because he has 13 bodies to throw at you. But it reminds me of another Hawkeye coach that we used to complain about not being able to adjust or adapt. And then he finally, after 15 years, adjusted and adapted, and he got a nice nickname called Newkirk. So maybe if we stick with Fran long enough, he will change his opinion on a few things and become a little bit better of an end-game coach. And
Yeah,
those are my thoughts on Fran.
that
I
was
think
a hell of an
we're stuck
answer.
with him. We're stuck with him. His players love him, so we should give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, that was a hell of an answer, man. I I want to second what you're saying personally, just to pick out a few things. I love the passion he shows. I love the fact that his players go to bat for him. They love the kind of coach he is. I think as well. I think he's done a great job of. I do like the fact that he runs multiple sets on defense, as we saw in the Jared Utoff years. When you have players who are defensively abled, that defense can work very well. But when you have, and not to pick on Jordan Bohannon, guys like Jordan Bohannon and Tyler Cook, they're not as defensive minded and they're not as strong defensively. Bohannon, I think, is a little bit of lack of athleticism and size. Cook is a little bit of, I'm not going to go there. I just think that sometimes he can be a little bit lazy defensively. He's athletic enough to do that. He just doesn't put as much effort, I feel like, into that piece of it. But when you have guys like that, it's going to be tough to run those defenses. But I do think that the defensive scheme can work with the right players. Some of the guys he's bringing in, Joe Toussaint is supposed to be a pretty solid perimeter defender. Patrick McCaffrey is an athletic freak for 6'8", very Jared Utoff esque in my opinion. And that, I mean, it's easy to look at a skinny, tall guy who played in Eastern Iowa and think that, but I truly do think that's a similar type of player.
Oh,
He could be very,
you mean like Jared Uthoff,
yeah, weird, right?
tall, skinny guy from Eastern Iowa?
Yeah. So, I mean, it just kind of makes too much sense. So I don't disagree with you. I think if the team underperforms at any point next year, we're going to be hearing people yelling louder and louder. And I think it's unfortunate. The Iowa fan base can be very impatient, and I don't disagree. I understand it's tough when you see these teams like Iowa State reload after a terrible, couple of years with Fred Hoiberg. They reloaded Fred Hoiberg, a bunch of transfers, and they all of a sudden are back on the national radar. It's tough to see Iowa not necessarily do all those things, but Iowa's doing it the right way, and I can always respect that, just like they do with Kirk. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. Ryan, any other last thoughts you have on this basketball team before we close out the show, man?
It honestly was a fun season. It was wildly unexpected. It caused a lot of chatter, at home with the family, at work, on Twitter. People had opinions. People wanted to share what they saw from the night before because you never knew what you were going to see. You were at times amazed, impressed, like, wow, this team is really cool. We haven't seen something like that. And the other times you're like, what the heck? Like, that was absolutely embarrassing, borderline unacceptable. Like, what are these guys doing? Is it like over? It was just wild. And it's, bad for the head, bad for the heart, but also, kind of good for the heart at the same time.
It was a fun season, man. I mean, I think about I was literally sitting in my living room watching Iowa versus Rutgers and seeing Joe Wieskamp hit that three. I started screaming and running around my living room. That's excitement you can't really match in a season typically. You don't get stuff like that, and we got it multiple times.
Yeah, so we were out in downtown Iowa City at the Chop House eating, and, we're kind of watching the TV, and I was kind of looking around, and it's like, oh, this is tight. Like, come on. Like, we made plans not knowing that we had a game, and then, it's like, oh, it's the Rutgers game. It's okay. And then you're not sure who else in the restaurant's watching either. But then when Wieskamp hits that shot, the whole restaurant goes nuts. It's like, oh, yeah, everybody.
The whole restaurant. I love it. Well, Ryan, I really appreciate you jumping on the show, man. We'll have to have you back. The Twitter followers out there, if you do like great content and unbiased opinions and lots of those opinions, and you want to follow Ryan, I believe it's Ryan_O_Might. That's RYNE_O_MIT. Is that correct?
Yeah, honestly, I have no idea what my Twitter handle is. You never type it, but that sounds right.
All right. Well, he'll be tagged in our Twitter handle when we post this show in the morning. We're recording this Tuesday evening for our Wednesday morning podcast show. Thank you again for tuning in on another episode of the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Make sure you are subscribing to our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you get that at. And again, follow us on Twitter at Locked On Iowa. Follow Ryan on Twitter at Ryan_O_Might. And you can follow me, Andrew Wade, at Wade_Andrew. I think now, man, you got me all confused. So make sure to follow us all on Twitter if you want awesome Hawkeye opinions. We'll be back tomorrow with another fantastic episode. We have the Iowa State runner-up at 160-pound weight for 3A 2008. A lot of words there, but basically a really good wrestler from the state of Iowa. He's going to be joining us to talk about Iowa wrestling. We also have a Hawkeye recruit, one of the highly touted recruits in the class of 2020 coming on the show next week as well. So make sure you're tuning into that. We're going to have some great content coming your way. And again, thank you for joining us on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Have a fantastic day, Hawkeye Nation, and we'll be back tomorrow.